Hi, everyone. Good morning and welcome to our webinar today using non-member cleanup tools. So in our version 66 announcement, we added a handful of new non-member and member matching and cleanup tools. And so we're going to go through those new tools as well as all of our existing tools that you can use to clean up your non-member database. Now, before we get started with that, we'll go through just a few housekeeping details. To start us off, all of your microphones are muted. So if you have any questions, my favorite colleague, Devin, is hanging out in the chat to answer all of your questions related to non-member cleanup during our webinar. So you don't have to wait until the end to answer those questions. A recording of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel in a couple of days. So be sure to check that out. If you are interested in further webinars that are upcoming, check out our calendar on clubexpress.com/calendar. You can see all of our upcoming webinars and register for them in advance so that they're on your calendar and ready to go. You don't have to register for the webinars in advance, but if you do, and you have something specific that you'd like to see demonstrated, you can add that as a note to your registration. So take a minute to see what we have coming up in our pipeline. And if you want to see something demonstrated, make sure to register and add in the question that you'd like to see us go through. And as I mentioned, this webinar, a recording of this webinar, we posted on our YouTube channel. So if you aren't able to stay for the entire thing, or if you'd like to check out some of our other videos, search for clubexpress.com on YouTube, and you can find all of our video tutorials and webinars. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you get notified when we post a new video or tutorial. And last, we love reviews. So if you are currently using ClubExpress, and especially if you're enjoying ClubExpress, even if you're not, we want to hear from you. Every review that our customers submit to any one of those sites helps us learn what we're doing right and what we could be improving on. And it helps other potential ClubExpress customers figure out if we are a good match for them. So your insight, whether it's good or bad or in between, is really valuable, not just to us, but to anyone else who is looking for a new website to manage their association. So go to clubexpress.com/reviews and leave us a review. So let's talk about non-member cleanup tools. But first, I want to just take a quick step back and talk about what we mean when we say non-member. So a non-member is an interested person, maybe someone who ended up on a mailing list, either of yours or of a related organization. And it's someone who doesn't pay your organization membership dues. So all of your active members likely have a monthly or an annual or maybe a biannual set of dues that they pay in order to renew their membership. Being a member of your organization likely means something that being a non-member doesn't. They have access to certain tools on your website. Maybe they're able to participate in forums. They're able to register for certain member-only events. And then, of course, you have people who might just add themselves to your mailing list because they want to see what you're up to in their community. Or maybe they have registered for an event that was open to everyone. So that gets into, how do non-members even get in my database? Well, to start, when you signed up for your ClubExpress website, you gave us a database of your members to import into your new website. You probably did the same thing with non-members if you had a list of non-members. Now, a lot of organizations come to us and they don't have a list of non-members. They only keep track of their members. They don't have anyone who doesn't pay dues who happens to be interested in their organization. But they might start collecting non-member information if they want to, expand who they contact, expand their membership database, and grow as an organization. So you have that initial database import that we handle for you. Now, you'll see that when we take a dive into our non-member tools, you can actually import you can import subsequent lists of non-members on your own. You don't have to ask us to import them. You don't have to pay us to import them. You can do that all on your own. We'll take care of the first one for free, and any subsequent lists you can do on your own. So this means that if you are part of a chaptered organization and a local chapter that's very near yours has closed down, and now you're maybe absorbing all of their members and even their non-member contact list, you can absorb all of that non-member information, add it to your database, and even categorize it as, these are all of the non-members that came to us from our local Chicago chapter. Your non-members can get into your database individually as well. So when you host an event, when you post a new donation fund on your website, when you add products to your storefront, if you're making those items available to everyone, not just your members, that means your non-members can sign up for an event, they can make a donation, they can buy something at your store, and their contact information is collected because of the interaction they have with your website, and it gets added to your non-member database. And then, of course, we have the one that everyone hates the most, non-members ending up in your database when they're really just a member who didn't sign in. So we're going to talk about how we can fix that and some of the extra ways that extra steps that you can take to maybe eliminate some of that extra data that gets added into your database for really no reason. So let's talk about some non-member data basics, and we're going to start looking at those tools. So first off, you can find your entire non-member database within the People Manager. So a couple of years ago, if you are a seasoned ClubExpress customer or ClubExpress user, you'll remember that we used to have separate databases. Now everything's rolled into the same database, but you can filter by members or non-members, or you can look through both sets of data at the same time. You also can find a read-only database in the People Lookup tool. So we're going to take a look at both of those tools in just a moment. So thinking of administrators having access to all data in the People Manager versus maybe a coordinator who might only need read access of contact information. You can also find a full count of your non-members through the People Manager. Now, finding a non-member count may not necessarily be relevant to you unless you have a lot of non-members in your database, because remember that for the most part, ClubExpress does not charge you for non-member contacts in your database up to a certain amount. So let's break that down. Non-member database capacity and fees. We do not charge for up to 5 times the number of active primary members in your database. So that means that if you have 100 active due-paying members in your member database, you can have up to 500 non-member contacts listed in your database for free. Now, starting at 501 in that example, we would charge you 2 cents per non-member per month after that. So if you have a lot of non-members, you might want to take a look at the count and see, okay, what can I clean up here in order to get that number down just a little bit and maybe save some money on my monthly bill. So let's go ahead and switch gears here. I'm going to end out of this presentation and switch over to our demo club, and I'm already in our People Manager. You can see that I've already pulled up a list of my non-members, but what I want to do is take a look at our People Lookup tool first. So I'm in our control panel, and I have 2 options, the People Manager and People Lookup. They're right next to each other. Because I'm an administrator, I have access to both of those tools. But if I'm coming in here maybe as a coordinator, I might only have access to the People Lookup function. So if I take a look at that, I'm seeing a very familiar search panel. All of the same search and filter options that you have in the People Manager, you also have those in People Lookup. So I can just look up a full list of non-members, and I see that full list, the same list that I would see within the People Manager. The only difference is I am missing all of the editing tools that are available to me. I can't edit a non-member's contact information from the People Lookup tool. I can't take a look at any financial history. All I can see is just basic contact information. I also don't have access to any of the cleanup tools. all of the cleanup tools are going to be available within the People Manager. So either an administrator would have access to these, or just a coordinator who has access to the People Manager. So let's take a look at our People Manager. And again, we have our list of non-members, and you'll see here, same list. Now I have all of these extra tools that I can use to manage those non-members. Now, what we're going to do is keep our attention towards the top here, because we're going to take a look at some of our non-member options. When I select non-member options, to the right of my option to add an individual non-member to my database, I have a few things that I can do. First, I can change the "How did you hear about us" options that a non-member might see when they decide to add themselves to your mailing list. Now, within our website options, you can choose to display a link that says "Add me to the mailing list." Now, this link appears at the very top of your website. It could appear really anywhere depending on where you put it in your website's template. And when someone clicks that link, they have the option to choose maybe what mailing list categories they'd like to be on. They can enter in their contact information, get added to any number of interests. They might be interested in a mailing list that you have for your monthly newsletter, or you might create a mailing list category for, let's say, upcoming events, and someone might be interested in upcoming events, so they want to get that email from you. You can also ask them then how they heard about your organization. So if you want to maybe start a new marketing campaign, or you want to start working with other local organizations and advertise events through those organizations as well, figure out if those things are actually working by adding them as an additional "How heard" option. So even when you sign up for a ClubExpress website, one of the questions that we ask you is how you heard about us. Really, when you sign up for any new site, they'll usually ask you, how'd you hear about us? Was it a radio ad? Was it a Google ad? Was it a magazine advertisement? Was it a paper mail? Next up, we talked about being able to import non-members on your own. So this is after that initial data import that we may have handled for you on the ClubExpress side. Any additional lists that you would have after the fact are ones that you can import on your own. So if I select Import Non-Members, I get a really helpful wizard that just lets me include that one list that I've accumulated, or even multiple lists. At the very top, within the instructions, I have the option to click to download a sample file. Now, this sample file is really just a plain Excel spreadsheet that's going to include the columns that you're supposed to have, and it's going to give you an example of what that data should look like if it's properly formatted, so that you can make sure that your import works properly. Now, if you have any questions about whether or not your data is formatted correctly before you hit that import button, give us a quick call. We're happy to take a look at it. If you have any questions about missing columns of data, if you just want to double check that you've done something correctly before importing a massive amount of data within your database, just give us a call. Again, we're happy to help you, happy to give you that peace of mind. First thing that you'll do is select a category. Now, when you select this category, everyone within that non-member data list that you have chosen to import is going to get imported under that specific category. So this is where we're talking about, if you get, let's say we're with the Northwest Balloon Club, Betsy's Balloons is a local store, and Betsy has very generously decided to provide us with a list of contacts. So maybe when you're at a local shop, they usually have a sign-up list where you can write down your email address and get added to their mailing list. Betsy's going to give us that list. So we're going to put that into our database, and we can name it Betsy's Balloons mailing list. That way we know that any of those contacts are ones that are interested in purchasing things for balloons. They're probably really interested in ballooning if they're going to a store for it. And so we could maybe use that as a list of people to reach out to if we're looking to grow our member database. Next up, if you're an organization with subgroups, and if you are if you're an organization with subgroups where at the top level, at your parent level, you have all of your chapters with a single page on your website. So that means that each of your chapters doesn't have its own website. They're simply a page on your full club's website. You can assign a subgroup to those contacts as well. So when you get mailing lists in from particular subgroups, you can add the subgroup notation so that those contacts match up with their proper chapter, even non-member contacts. And then finally, you select your file. Now, let's go into what our session today is actually about, which is using those data cleanup tools. So we're going to finally go to our last option here, which is non-member options cleanup tools. And we're taken to our non-member database cleanup screen. Now, the first thing that I want to show you isn't really a cleanup tool. It's just the first option that I spoke about earlier, which is to show your non-member statistics. So if I select Go, I can see a current count of non-members. I'm at 533. Now, ClubExpress has graciously done the math for you. So right underneath that, you can see what's the maximum I can hit before I have to start paying for these non-members. So right now, I'm clearly under what my maximum amount is. So I'm not paying an overage and I'm not paying that monthly fee. So even if I had an overage, let's say I, get it way up to 555 non-members. That means that we would calculate that overage for you, and you can see a breakdown of that right on your non-member statistics screen. So I can see even now, I'm getting a little close to that number, and I'm really trying to stay within budget. And while 2 cents a member isn't very much, I don't want it to get out of control. So let's go through these cleanup tools and see what we can do. I'm going to start with the first one, the simplest one, finding duplicates by email address and first name. Now, on the right-hand side, whenever I select one of these options, I'm going to see a really great descriptor right next to it. So if you're ever just kind of poking around, seeing, well, what's this going to take out? What's this going to match? How is this going to work? Take a look at this description. So for example, when you're searching for names, we have kind of a different way that names are going to be matched. So if you look at our example, we take into account common name variations. So in the case of William, you have no idea if they, sometimes William decides he's going to sign Will, sometimes he decides he's going to call himself Bill, and sometimes he signs his full name William. So I want to make sure that I'm finding every single instance of Bill potentially signing up for something across my site. Now, and you'll note that in the bottom paragraph is a perfect example of ways that name recognition may not work. In the case of Al, that can be used for Albert or Alfred. So again, keeping in mind these little descriptors are there for a reason. They're really helpful, and it could help you recognize maybe why, some pieces are coming into place and some pieces aren't. Maybe you need to use a different search function for that. Now, if I select Go, it's not going to clean anything up. It's not going to magically erase anything. Clicking Go is only going to give me a report of, okay, this is what we found. This is what can get cleaned up. Now, let's take a look at this list of search results and talk about our search result options as well as our automatic option. Within search results, you're usually going to find whatever information you've searched for. So in this case, I'm looking for a duplicate by email address and first name. And so I'm seeing a list of email addresses, also names. Next to that, I'm seeing the number of non-members that match that criteria. So it looks like I don't have a lot of non-members who sign up more than once for something. Now, remember that when you go to sign up for something, let's take an event, for example. When you're signing up for an event, the first thing that you'd see is a spot to enter in some contact information. Now, right above that, we ask, are you a member of the organization? If so, sign in here. Or have you signed up for an event in the past? Or have you maybe made a donation? Because your information might be in the database. Non-members can search for themselves in your database when they go to sign up for something. It's not something that is extremely apparent, especially, it's not something that you're used to as someone who might interact with other organizations. Usually you don't have the ability to do anything if you're a non-member. You just sort of anonymously show up, sign up for something, and then that's it. But with ClubExpress, non-members can find themselves, and you can keep a nice clear record of even a non-member who has signed up for multiple events. Maybe think about that as a way to reach out to people to, again, increase your membership. Find non-members that may have, registered for multiple events. They clearly seem to be interested, and include them in a little email campaign that you might drum up. So I digress. Let's get back to work here. We can see our number of non-members who have erroneously added themselves, maybe made a few donations, registered for a couple of events. In our maintain column, the options that you are going to see are consistent, but they're also based on the search that you might be running and the results of that search. The eyeball icon is always going to take you to a separate screen where I can view a breakdown. I see I have 3 separate people here who are using this email address. Let's take a look at a breakdown. So I have 3 separate people with the name ABC, and they also have input the exact same email address. So I can maybe assume that at least the first two at least the first and the last are the same person. Same first name and last name, same first name and last name. They're not real first names and last names, but that's not what we're focused on. Now, what about this middle one here, ABC Apple? That's a totally different person. So let me go back into my previous page. And before I do anything, before I start merging anything, I'm just going to take one quick look at the rest of my options. Let's make sure that that's the option I want to go for. Next couple of icons, again, you're going to see these in a lot of places. So the second icon is to merge all records together. Now, what that means is that all 3 of these non-member records will be merged into one non-member record. And you'll notice if we go back in to take a look at that data, well, the data was kind of all over the place. So we have one that has an address, we have one that's super old. So when I select, we go back again. If I'm selecting that merge option, the system is going to merge all of the records with the most recent one, because you're kind of assuming that the most recently entered information by that person is the most likely to be correct and to be updated. So merging all of those together is going to merge them all to the most recent record created. The next option is to merge them all to a member. Now, we haven't started talking about member merges or even matching items with member data, but if you see within your database, even though we're not talking about members yet, we're not looking at member data, if you see this, and I know that email address, I know ABC, and that person's actually a member, I can choose merge to member, search within my member database, and find a member to merge those entries to. Now, if I go back into my view non-member details, again, I'm only looking at that first line item. I'm only dealing with ABC right now. So if I take a look at that, I can say, well, I know that these 2 are the same person, and I am going to merge those items together. And I'll select merge selected items into most recent, which means that ABC in the first instance is going to be merged into the second instance, because we'll see that that second instance is the most recent. At the very top, I have just a quick confirmation message. I'll go ahead and select OK. And now I have 2 entries. One of the entries was the one that I wasn't so sure about, ABC Apple. That seems like it might be a different person. And then I have ABC DEF. And we've already merged that data together. Now I can go back to my previous page. It's still going to show up within my non-member database. None of the data accumulated by either of those merged members is lost. It's all merged into the same record. Now, another option that you have would be
An automatic merge. That's going to automatically merge all of these members into the most recent non-member record without taking a look at the individual entries. So keep in mind that automatic anything is usually a pretty dangerous tool. So you want to really, really make sure that every single one of these is going to work out okay. Now, we only have 12 sets of duplicates that were found here, but depending on the size of your database, there might be quite a few. You are going to be tempted to select automatic merge. We can't undo that for you. So be very sure if if spot checking is the maximum amount of checking that you want to do, great. If you really feel that you need to go through each record individually, that's why we have that eyeball icon. Take your time. Don't do anything harsh, and you'll be fine. So let's go ahead and kind of go through some of these other options here as well. And we'll see that we're going to see a lot of the same tools. So we're just going to highlight some of the things that are similar and then those differences as well. Finding duplicates by first and last name. We talked about all of those instances where the names would match and the names might not match. Now we're looking for duplicate first and last names only. We're not worrying about anything else. And one, I'm seeing more matches. I'm also seeing some new icons. So let's take a look at what those are for. First up, remember that our search criteria is going to give us what we've actually searched for. So here are the name matches, the number of non-members with matches to that name. I have that familiar view icon, new icon. We'll come back to that in a minute. We have our option to merge everybody together, merge everyone to a member, and merge them all to a specific member that the database has found for you. Let's talk about these special icons. The first is to view the member profile. This icon indicates to me that even within my search, where I wasn't specifically looking to match to a member came up in my search results. Extremely helpful for you. You don't have to deal with those. If you would rather work by the match non-member to member by first and last name instead of finding duplicates, you can do that. Because again, here, we're not just dealing with duplicate names that may have been found within the non-member database. We're also dealing with those that may have been found in the member database as well. If I take a look, let's just quickly take a look at John Smith. Let's see what we came up with here. So we have 8 different records that have been found for John Smith with varying levels of contact information, and they all have been added on different days. Looks like John Smith was very active on the 27th and signed himself up for things about 6 times there. So I can merge all of these items into the most recent. I can merge these items into a specific member. Let's go back into our previous page. And let's take a look at this member profile icon. This is going to take us to the member profile of John Smith, the John Smith that the database found that matched the name of a bunch of other people in the non-member database. Now, when I'm taking a look, again, I looked at the John Smith member profile. What I can do is merge all of those non-member records into John Smith automatically without, taking a look at individual records. I can go back into those individual records and I can pick and choose the same way that I did with that first instance. I can go ahead and choose individual member records to merge with John. So perhaps, it looks like we have a different address for a lot of these records. Maybe I want to just double check what is member John Smith's address and merge all of those together. You have a lot of options. So depending on, maybe how messy your data might get, a lot of these cleanup tools might take a little bit of time. Again, if you have a lot that, maybe needs a second or third set of eyes, really try to avoid that automatic merge because again, we cannot undo that for you. Now, let's take a look at matching non-member and member records. And now let's take a look at matching non-member to member records by first name. I'll go ahead and select go. And we can see fewer duplicates, remember, because now we're not concerning ourselves with what's matching within the non-member database. Right now, we are only looking at non-members matched to members. So if I take a look at these options, I see the exact same icons that I was used to seeing, and we have a new one that's snuck in there. So first up, here's our John Smith one more time. Number of non-members that match John Smith, 8. 8 different times. Now, John Smith is, again, maybe a popular name, so they may not all belong to the same John Smith, which is why you want to use that eyeball tool so you can individually manage those entries. Now, if we scroll down, let's see, I found myself here in this database. So I have 3 non-members that match this name and 4 members. I can view each of those individual entries. And here's our new icon, View People Manager. This is actually one of my favorite things. I was super excited when I saw that this was added to the enhancements that that our developers built for this. So what this does is it's a pretty cool button. It takes us to the People Manager where we have a pre-filled search that shows us exactly the criteria that we were searching for. So because there were 4 separate members that matched with that first and last name, we don't get that button that just takes us straight to the member profile because we have 4 separate people to look at. So instead, we get taken to the People Manager, search gets pre-populated. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to go back in there, grab a Post-it, write down that person's name, and then hope I type it in the right way in the People Manager. I could go on and on about this tool. I love that little button. I think it's just the greatest thing. So now I can go through each of these individual members that have been added, view their member profile, see, okay, which one is the member profile that Samantha signed up with when she was having trouble logging in that one time? When is it that she forgot that she already signed up to be a part of Northwest Balloon Club, and instead of renewing, she just added a new membership? All of these things are possible. So we'll go back to our previous page. And we'll go right back into our People Manager and non-member options. And again, on the right-hand side, we have that automatic merge. Now, I'll stress again that when you merge something automatically, it's going to merge records into the most recent record. In this case, it's going to merge records by merging them all to John Smith. It's going to merge them all to a single record. Now, you'll see that the star icon doesn't appear for the instances where more than one member is matching that record. That's because we want you to pick which member it is that you want to merge them all to. So if I take a look at my instances of Samantha and I take a look at those individual records, I can still select them all and merge them into a specific member. I can merge all of these individual records together. So when you're taking a look at your cleanup tools, most of what you're going to be doing is matching by duplicates, finding duplicates and merging those together. Keep in mind that none of the data is lost. It all just gets merged into the new person. Now, if you wanted to perhaps add a note within a member profile or the non-member contact information to say, on this date, we did a mass merge and merge some of this data together. You can, if having a sort of record like that is important to you. But as far as you're concerned, once you merge those records together, it's going to appear and act as if there's only ever been one record, and all of the financial information, all of the event registration history, volunteering history, donation history, all of that is going to be contained in a single record. Now, let's move on to some of the additional categories that we have here, or cleanup tasks. First, finding non-members without an email address. Now, we kind of talked about, having junk data in your database, or maybe having a whole host of people in your non-member database that maybe don't need to be there. Let's talk about missing email records. Now, whether you've come to ClubExpress with an existing non-member contact list, or you've acquired one from another organization, this is going to be a really, really big tool for you to use. So think about the types of communication that you use as an organization. Most of you are probably doing exclusive email communication to your members, maybe text messaging as well. You are probably not still sending out physical mail. If you are, then the next thing that I'm about to say doesn't apply to you. But if you're just sending out email communications and you have hundreds of non-members in your database that don't have an email address, feel free to get rid of them. They're sitting in there, and non-members don't have a way to sign in and update their email address. That's something that falls on the administrator. And unless you have close personal contact with that non-member, you're probably not going to know their email address. So it's a pretty safe bet that if you can't fix this, you can get rid of it. Now, when I'm going through this list, I have kind of an angry message at the very top of my screen that says that the list is limited to 100 records, but if I delete some, I can see more. So I can go ahead at the very top of this list. If I'm feeling brave and I'm ready to say goodbye to that junk data, I can click the top checkbox. It's going to select every single record, and I can hit delete selected items. Deleting a lot of things at one time makes me nervous, so I'm going to uncheck that box. And I can certainly go through these individual records. Maybe I'm going through this list and I realize that, oh, maybe, Phyllis, Phyllis is a really big donor. I'm not sure why we don't have her email address, but I know that I have it somewhere in my contact list. I'm going to go ahead and update that. And I can go ahead and choose that edit icon, and I can edit all of Phyllis's contact information. Now let's go back into our non-member cleanup tools, and we can find non-members with any missing data. So not just emails that are missing, but even addresses that are missing too. And will you look at that? This is another one of my favorite sneaky little tools. On the right-hand side, I can filter, okay, well, I don't necessarily care about whether or not they're missing an email address because I'm getting ready to do a mass mail campaign. So I only want to find people that are missing an address in a city, and I can then delete that information. Now, you have to keep in mind the types of communication that you are using as an organization to figure out what's important to you, what information you collect, and if you don't have it, you can get rid of it. And it just helps you maintain a much more clean database, and it helps you really evaluate your club's data in a more efficient way, and in a way that's a lot more accurate, again, if the data is accurate. And then the last option, delete non-members in a specific category. Now, we talked about our mailing list categories that you might create, mailing list categories that you would have people added to. You have the ability to delete non-members from any specific category that you've added. Let's go back into our previous example that I used way earlier in our webinar. When we're talking about organizations with subgroups, when we're talking about maybe absorbing mailing lists of other local organizations. Let's say that, 5 years later, a local organization that may be folded due to inactivity is ready to start up again. They have a lot of interested people, and they're now ready to break off into their own organization. Maybe you want to then remove those non-members from your mailing list. So you can say, okay, I'd like to remove everyone who was part of the Southwest Balloon Club because they're going to start their own chapter now. So I can go in, I can find my Southwest Balloon Club mailing list and delete all of those people. And of course, we have our smart little tip on the side here. When you are performing a mass delete for non-members in a category, it's important to know that if a non-member belongs to a category that you're about to delete, in addition to some other categories that you are not deleting, that non-member doesn't go anywhere. They do not get deleted from your database. They are only removed from that category. So breathe easy. That if you are wanting to get rid of a category application, you aren't necessarily getting rid of every single person. You're only going to get rid of the non-members who only subscribe to that category, where that category is the only category that's checked. If they have more than that category, they'll stay right there. Again, they'll just have that category unchecked. Now, another thing that I kind of want to talk about, we've talked a lot about our cleanup tools. We have talked a lot about, the ways to keep in mind, all of the changes that you might be making across your database. We want to make sure that you use these database cleanup tools for positive things and that they don't create more stress for you. So the biggest thing to remember is you have to make sure that if you are using an automatic feature or delete all or merge all or anything that says the word all, you want to really, really make sure that you are comfortable doing that with all of those pieces of data. So what I want to do now is go ahead and show just a couple of tips that I want to bring to our attention here, or excuse me, not show, we'll just talk about them. In order to, make sure that you have the best tools to communicate, start considering requiring an email address for certain things. When you take a look at your events, when you're adding an event to your calendar and you're choosing what information gets added when a non-member signs up or when a guest signs up, a lot of times we might just skip over that and just say, well, I really only care if they're bringing a guest because I just need to know how many people I need to feed. Well, consider really paying attention to the information that you're collecting. Consider requiring an email address, especially if your primary way of communicating is via email. Because if you're not collecting an email address for those non-members who are signing up for your events, who are making donations, you're leaving a lot on the table at that point. So you also should consider, friendly reminders to your members to sign in. Now, that could be, just an email a couple of times a year. You could even put a banner at the top of every email you send. Members, remember to sign in when you come to our site. It gives you access to special things. Give incentives to sign in. Let your members know right off the bat, this is what you're missing if you're not going to sign in. I know a lot of organizations usually have a really huge issue with getting members to physically sign in when they're making a donation, when they're signing up for an event, and it adds to their non-member database, and it really hinders their ability to properly report on things. So let your members know you're not going to be able to participate in forums. You're going to be paying more for events if you give members a discount on event registrations versus non-members. They might be missing out on special products in your storefront that are only available to members. They could be missing out on a lot of things on your website. So let them know that in advance. And even try reminding non-members to find their record. So consider this, when you have your next event, if you see that you had a lot of non-member interest in that event, consider sending a follow-up email to those non-members and say, hey, thanks for coming to this event. We were so happy to have you. Here's more information about our organization. And if you want to sign up for an event in the future, we've got your email address. Just enter that in when you sign in. Maybe give them a screenshot of what that is going to look like for them so that they know going forward that they can kind of keep their own information the same as they interact with your organization. And I have to say that that kind of contact with non-members, someone who doesn't have a vested interest in your organization, someone who has not paid you membership dues, someone who's just interested, that really could mean a lot to them. And that kind of contact and that kind of outreach is just one of many things that you can do to generate more interest in your organization. Because I got to say, if you're that friendly to non-members, they can only imagine how beneficial being a part of your organization can be. And with that being said, Devin, how are we doing on questions?
We're doing great. We've got a few questions, just a couple. Someone was hoping to see, it's somewhat related, for the event registrations, the method that we use to ensure that people are presented with the option to log in when they're going to register for an event. In the case of someone who is a member but has not logged in, if they go to the event registration screen.
So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at our events. So very quickly, I'm going a little slow here. So very quickly, we have a bunch of events on our calendar so far. We have some registrations. Some of these events are going to be available to members and some of them are going to be available to everyone. So if I just go ahead and log out, now I am visiting the Northwest Balloon Club. I'll go ahead and close out of all of these tabs. So I'm visiting the Northwest Balloon Club as a non-member, just someone who's interested. I can visit the calendar. And I can scroll down and I may not see every single event. I may only see events that are available to the general public or available to non-members only. So I can click on any event and I can see that registration is required. There isn't a fee. If I select register, even though there isn't a fee, I'm still required to enter in some information. Now, at the very top, are you a club member? I can log in or I can recover my username and password. Underneath that, I've decided, first of all, I'm not logged in. So the system recognizes that right away, I'm probably a non-member, but gives me that option. And then here's where I enter in my information as a non-member. If I say that I've previously registered for an event or I'm on their mailing list, once I see that, oh yeah, I signed up for their mailing list, I can click and find myself by my email address or first name. And then that information is automatically populated and I can continue with registration.
All right. One other question we had was also somewhat event related is when you merge those profiles over, it should take the event history and payment history with that non-member into the member profile. Is that correct?
It takes everything: events, donations, payments, purchases, and volunteering history.
Okay. So if you're not seeing that, someone said that they were trying out the merge and they weren't seeing that take effect. So if you see something like that, go ahead and reach out to support so we can see if there's something off in the system, because merging a non-member into a member profile should bring everything on that non-member profile over to the member. And then the last question we got was someone who just wanted to see where the reports for all non-members based on how they heard about the system
For
or
that, we're going
the
to log in.
organization.
Yes. So, and one more thing to add, if you're using the collectibles module, collectibles get transferred over as well. So you don't lose those either. And so what we're going to do is we're in our People tab and we're taking a look at our reports that are built into the People tab. We have non-member reports that are completely separate from all of your member lists and mailing labels. So if I click non-member database, I can get just a full report of my non-member database and non-member database by how heard. And if we scroll down just a little bit, I can see some additional mailing labels. So if you want to send physical mail out to your non-members separately, but that non-member database by how heard, that's how you can see, okay, how many people heard from us from that Google ad that we posted? How many people found us on Facebook? These are great questions.
I think that's all I had in the way of questions, though.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope that you were just as excited about the cleanup tools as I was. Probably not, but thank you for joining us anyway. We hope that these are really helpful for you. Next week, we're going to be talking about another one of our enhancements that we're, again, very excited for. Devin is going to take us on a wonderful tour of our website menu. So if you watched our version 66 announcement, and of course, if you didn't, you can see it on our YouTube channel. If you watched it, you know that we introduced mega menus to our website. So mega menus are a special type of submenu. They make your website look really modern. They're really fancy. A lot of the newer websites now have them. So we're going to talk about all of the different things that you can do with website menus. And trust me, there's a lot. So stay tuned for that. Be sure to register for it in advance if you have some specific things that you'd like to see us demonstrate. This is going to be a really exciting one. Thank you for joining today's webinar, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.